The Ishrat Jehan case has returned to haunt the Congress. Revelations by former Home Secretary G.K. Pillai, who's gone on record to say that it was then Home Minister P. Chidambaram who personally changed an affidavit on the Ishrat case to remove a reference to her, has created a political storm, with the BJP now gunning for the former Home and Finance Minister. Here's what G.K. Pillai said to NDTV earlier today. Mr. Pillai went on record to say that Chidambaram had bypassed both him, he was Home Secretary then, as well as senior officials of the Intelligence Bureau, when he changed an affidavit that had already been placed in the Gujarat High Court to remove a reference to Ishrat Jehan as a Lashkar terrorist. G.K. Pillai also told us that Chidambaram personally dictated and drafted the second affidavit that clarified that any information on Ishrat's Lashkar links could only be regarded as inputs by the Intelligence Bureau and not as conclusive evidence. Pillai told NDTV that it is a minister's prerogative to take a final decision, but now he must own responsibility for that decision. Remember, in the last 24 hours, Chidambaram has said that G.K. Pillai also saw the changed affidavit. Chidambaram has also given an interview to us in which he said he does own the decision, but other officials of the Ministry of Home, in other words, the then Home Secretary G.K. Pillai, were also party to it. Pillai is rubbishing this, saying it was Chidambaram's decision alone. Chidambaram has gone on to say that it's not relevant whether Ishrat Jehan was a terrorist or not. What is relevant is whether the encounter that killed her was genuine or whether it was fake, something that the Congress has long maintained. It's now become a huge political debate. Why were the affidavits changed? The BJP, of course, alleging that this was politically manipulated and the Congress was deliberately soft on a known terrorist, on someone with known terror links, something her lawyer has, of course, denied. Now, in another twist that is going to, of course, only increase the politics around this case, with, as we said, the BJP demanding action and explanation from the former Home Minister, against the former Home Minister, and saying the Congress must explain how this affidavit was changed. An undersecretary in the Home Ministry at that time, a man called RVS Mani, a bureaucrat named RVS Mani, has come to be at the center of this storm. Mani is the man who in fact wrote both affidavits. Affidavit 1 that referred to Ishrat as a Lashkar terrorist, and Affidavit 2 that described this to be a mere intelligence input that could not be treated as conclusive evidence. Now, RVS Mani has in fact told NDTV he was harassed, he was hounded, the CBI tried to coerce him into framing IB officials, and he's further gone on to in fact say that he almost wanted to leave his government job because that's how badly he was harassed. RVS Mani is also on record in the Supreme Court complaining about the SIT officer, the Special Investigative Team officer, Satish Verma, who interrogated him, saying that Satish Verma, this is RVS Mani on record in a letter, Satish Verma tortured me, he wanted me to implicate an IB officer. He's talking, of course, about Rajendra Kumar. Let me go across to my colleague Sunetra Chaudhary, who did speak with RVS Mani. Sunetra, we are accessing now both Mani's testimony in the Supreme Court as well as letters he's written talking about being stalked and continuously harassed. What did he say to you?
Well, what's very interesting is that while he put those letters on record, he still harbors that hurt and the torture and the harassment that he faced. When I spoke to him this morning, he was a little reluctant about coming out, but what he did say was that he had suffered immensely in the hands of those people who wanted him to give something a little more incriminating. In fact, he told us that he was now back in the government in the Ministry of Textile, but for a long time his application was for voluntary retirement. He also said that because of the kind of harassment that he faced in 2013, when his testimony became the scrutiny of the CBI. If you recall, at that time, Barkha, the CBI was trying to, their entire effort was in finding out what was the difference in the two testimonies that was filed by RVS Mani, and they wanted to know what made him change the testimony. And while RVS Mani has been on the record to say that it was all officials, it was all done in consultation, what he says is that CBI wanted him to implicate certain officials of the IB, and he says that he faced so much of a torture that he says that his parents were healthy, and despite that they died prematurely in the last 2 years because the kind of mental harassment that he faced. He also said that he wanted voluntary retirement but he didn't get it, and now he's back in the government.
And of course, Sunetra, the words used by him in his testimony in the Supreme Court are very, very strong. He says he was continuously stalked and mentally harassed at every point. Now, my colleague Sudhir Ranjan Sen is also with us. Both Sunetra and Sudhi have been tracking different dimensions of this growing political storm. Sudhi, in another twist, there's RVS Mani, of course, now coming out and speaking. There's GK Pillai coming out and speaking. But another twist that hasn't actually caught the public attention yet, but I can bet that it's only a matter of time before this becomes a talking point, is David Headley's testimony to the NIA team. Now, you will remember, because I remember you broke this story in 2010, Sudhi, on this very program, The Buck Stops Here, when the NIA team went to meet with David Headley. At that time, certain documents leaked into the public domain suggested that Headley had told the NIA back then that he'd overheard a conversation between Muzammil Bhatt and Zakir Rahman Lakhvi naming Ishrat Jehan as an LET operative. But when the NIA charge sheet was eventually filed, there was no such mention. Now, Ishrat's lawyers, of course, have maintained that this is just hearsay. They continue to say that even today. But the fact is that what Headley told the NIA back then is exactly what he said in court earlier this year. And yet the charge sheet was silent on this, is what the BJP is now saying that the government of that time, which is the UPA government, must explain.
Well, yes, exactly, Barkha, because Headley in his one in the statement that he gave to the NIA and subsequently in the deposition before the court has maintained more or less the same thing, which is that he did hear Muzammil, overhear a conversation between Muzammil where the name of Ishrat Jehan was there and mentioned as one of the LET terrorists. Now, that has been the consistent stand, it seems, of David Coleman Headley since the beginning. Now, that is the portion that initially came out, and then the government then did a complete flip over it, withdrew it. Then they said that, well, it is not acceptable in this, we cannot use the statement of Headley in any other case, which again is not correct, because during the day when I was speaking to old or previous DIBs, I was speaking to people who were associated with the case. It seems that the FBI has no problem if the statement of Headley is used in other cases, but we were told earlier otherwise, that it cannot be used. And then this entire issue of the changing, the affidavits. In the first affidavit, you clearly say that Ishrat Jehan is a terrorist, and subsequent to that, you change it. Of course, we have heard Mr. Chidambaram giving his side, saying that how the IB cannot be pointing out who's a terrorist and who's not. But then two Home Secretaries, Mr. Pillai and Mr. R.K. Singh, that is today, have both contradicted him, and therefore the total spotlight is on the Congress and more so on the former Union Home Minister.
Right, Sudhi, thanks very much. Now, of course, at the heart of this entire storm, thanks, Sudhi, are these two affidavits, affidavit number 1 and affidavit number 2. And basically, here's what happens between August and September 2009. This is how the affidavits actually change. Let's quickly run you through the changes in the affidavit. In affidavit 1, media reports are quoted to say that Ishrat was a woman activist of the Lashkar-e-Taiba. But by September 2009, Affidavit 2 says media reports cannot constitute or be treated as intelligence inputs. Affidavit 1 quotes an apology by the Lashkar mouthpiece as proof of Ishrat's Lashkar links. Affidavit 2 says that intelligence inputs cannot constitute conclusive proof. Affidavit 1 says that the police action, this is of course the action in which Ishrat and her companions were killed, has already been investigated. Affidavit 2 says that if there is required to be another CBI probe, the government has absolutely no objection to the CBI probe. This is despite the fact that Affidavit 1 actually said that the Ishrat encounter was not a fit case for a CBI probe. So these are the big changes. One, of course, the reference to Ishrat Jehan's Lashkar links, which the second affidavit says IB inputs cannot be treated as proof, media reports cannot be treated as intelligence inputs. And 2, the big difference also is Affidavit 1 said there was no need for a CBI probe, this was not a fit case for a CBI probe, and Affidavit 2 was changed to basically say that the centre had absolutely no objections to a CBI probe. Now, we asked former Home Minister P. Chidambaram whether he owned the decision to basically make these changes to the affidavit, and here's what he said. when Headley testifies to overhearing a conversation between Muzammil Bhatt and Zakir Rahman Lakhvi about Ishrat Jehan being an LET operative. Then your former NSA M.K. Narayanan, writing in The Hindu, says the same. Now G.K. Pillai, talking on another channel, talks about how the affidavit under your ministry was actually altered. Affidavit 1 referred to Ishrat as an LET operative, which was not seen by you. I remember reporting this story. And affidavit 2, presumably seen by you, removes that reference. M.K. Narayanan, NSA says she's Lashkar. G.K. Pillai says the reference was removed at a political level. Headley says she was an LET operative. How do you, Mr. Chidambaram, then react to the opposition charge that this was political interference to try and basically embarrass the Modi government?
No, I think several issues are being mixed up here. The original affidavit did say that A, B, C, D were terrorists. But the IB's position was, we don't name or charge anyone as a terrorist. We provide intelligence. Intelligence is not proof. The first affidavit was misinterpreted
By
to
whom?
mean, misinterpreted by the agencies in Gujarat and by the court also, to mean that IB had in fact charged A, B and C, D as terrorists. So it was the IB which said, that is not our intent. We don't charge anyone, we just provide intelligence. Therefore, the second affidavit had to be filed to clarify. Please read the second affidavit. It clarifies that IB only provides intelligence. That is not proof. It is for the investigating agency and the prosecuting agency to pick up the intelligence, gather proof, and prove whether a person is a terrorist or not. I think the second affidavit correctly stated the IB's actual position.
How do you see the Headley testimony? How do you see the NSA describing her as someone he believes was a Lashkar operative? And now you have a similar suggestion coming from the Home Secretary. Why then did your party take the position that she was innocent?
No. My party did not take the position that she was innocent or guilty. My party simply said, you cannot charge anyone as being a terrorist without evidence. That was the one level. The more important level is, even if she was a terrorist, even if she had links with LET or any other terrorist organization, nobody can be killed in a fake encounter.
Do remember that the first affidavit that named her as a terrorist was not seen by you as Home Minister.
And that was not the position of the IB either.
But that's not what Rajinder Kumar is saying today.
Well, affidavit had been poorly drafted. Nobody in the IB will own up to the fact that they charged anyone as being a terrorist. Their stand is, and that's the correct stand, IB only provides intelligence to the state police.
Do you therefore own your decision to have, I assume it was your decision because you didn't see the first affidavit, you saw the second.
I was a minister.
To remove the reference.
I was a minister. There were
from
others
the first
involved.
affidavit.
There were others involved in that decision. But obviously, I own that decision because I was a minister at that time.
So you own the decision to...
But others can't disown it either.
Who are the others?
Well, there were officials. They can't disown it either.
You mean the Home Secretary of that time, G.K. Pillai, was also part of that decision, who has made a different allegation now?
Well, I don't know what he said. The relevant officials are also part of that decision. But of course, since I'm the minister, I was a minister, I own that decision.
The decision to remove Ishrat's name as a terrorist from the first affidavit to the second affidavit.
The decision to clarify the earlier affidavit to say IB only provides intelligence and it's for the investigating and prosecuting agency to gather evidence and prove whether a person is a terrorist or not.